Hi ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Genshin Impact. Today we are going to be giving some much needed love to a very unlucky boy, and that is of course Bennett. Now, in this video I'm going to do my best to showcase how amazing Bennett is, even though the whole community is relatively knows that. I'm a little bit late to this party, but I still think there's like a handful of people who are just getting into Genshin or who are just looking for me for news, which, dude, there's a lot of channels that are fantastic. But anyways, I could cover why he is so great and for those specific people, but if you are not them, then of course this video is not designated for you, but maybe watch and we'll have some fun anyway. But regardless, ladies and gentlemen, this is Bennett. He is a 4-star character that most people in the game would argue that he is, or should be, a 5-star, up there with the likes of Shincho, just being a stupidly good support, but also incredibly easy to build, like incredibly easy to build, and not only that, but he's a character that can be viable through a lot of different artifact sets. It's not just the one artifact that's like clearly made for them, and if you use the other ones, or DPS is going to go down by 20%, and it's just going to be a little messy. No, Bennett goes a lot of places. So first things first is that Bennett is this weird, very rare character in the game, which is a damage amplification character by amplifying your damage, not by just adding damage on top, i.e. like a Fischl or a Shincho who starts throwing electric sparks through a bird. Electric sparks to what happened there? Electric spark through a bird, or blades. What is going? Bennett's taking my breath away. Anyways, so first things first, the number one thing that's important about Bennett is please, everyone complain about the way he looks, but at least his clothing, because it looks the worst in the entire game. He has the worst outfit in the entire game, bar none. Bar none. Mahoyo, please. Give a free skin. Please don't make it fucking pay. Don't give Barbara a skin, the least played character. Give Bennett a skin, for the love of God. Alright, don't give him baggy ass weird shorts and a stomach exposed. Alright, I know why it's every fucking person in this game's prerogative to have their belly cold. But regardless, please, Mahoyo, change. Give him a goddamn skin. Anywho, nonsense aside, this is Bennett. Now, what makes Bennett so crazy is 2 or 3 skills, but how they play into each other in a really kind of unconventional way. So first things first is this one. This one is Fantastic Voyage. This skill is Bennett's bread and butter, and Bennett is a character that you should primarily aim for having a shit ton of energy recharge so that you can get to his ult. Now we're going to go into various subgenre of Bennett builds that you can go to, but this is the one that I think is the easiest to create with the biggest amount of bang for your buck, and you're going to see the most out of this specific kind of build. I just want to explain why this character is as broken and why so many people think he's just fantastic. But essentially, Bennett puts down this giant fist, this giant like red fist on the ground, and if you're in it, you will start healing up to 70% of your max HP. Now you don't get full health, which isn't bad considering how much healing this can proc for. And not only that, but this thing's your ult healing scales off of Bennett's max HP, so you're gonna want to aim for high HP with Bennett, because it's going to make you functionally invulnerable whilst you're in this special zone. Now, another thing to consider about Bennett that is fantastic is that when you are in this zone, if you have enough constellation, or if you are just above 70% health, so if you are maxed out on the healing that can be granted, which if you just have constellation 0 Bennett, and you just give him enough HP, or healing bonus, whatever, HP is better, but you can go healing bonus too, but basically you'll be able to get to the max point anyway, so it's not like you need constellation for Bennett, but we'll get into why that can be very helpful in the future in a couple seconds here. But anyways, Bennett gives a bonus to attack speed based on Bennett's base attack speed. Or attack, sorry, not speed, attack. Now what they mean by base attack is Bennett's base attack is functionally whatever you see when it comes to his weapon. So Bennett's base attack, which is his weapon's base attack, scales off of the level of your weapon. So when it comes to Bennett's, the level of your weapon is what matters, and the rarity of your weapon matters as well. So if we go to, so right here, this is a level 90 weapon, but its base attack is 565, but this is a legendary, or a, whatever you want to call it, it's a gold. And its attack is 741. That's huge. So, and they're both the same level, right? So again, this is just kind of echoing the point of if you happen to have a really high rarity weapon, level that one up just to use as a stat stick for Bennett's attack bonus that your other characters are going to be benefiting from. And then as of his kit and the inside of his kind of build, just go with energy recharge and HP, and you'll be fully sent and ready to go. It's kind of like Venti now, where Venti, you only really need the base artifact to have elemental mastery on every stat, and not anything in the substats. It doesn't really matter in the substats. You could have elemental mastery again in the substats, and maybe energy recharge, and that could be nice. But otherwise, you just need the base, and they'll perform incredibly. Bennett is in the same kind of category, to where all you really need energy recharge and HP. And again, we're at the point where like my Bennett heals too much, to the point where like it's diminishing returns, but also it's not bad that that's the case, because there's nothing really to do else with him unless I wanted to make him some sort of weird DPS, and that adds a lot of complexity, I think, to a basic kind of build character, which you could use if you want, and we'll go over that in a minute. But yes, so yes, Bennett's alt, god tier. A lot of people know that, but for the one person that doesn't, hiya, I love you. Let's get into it. So again, also he does pyro when he impacts, and this does do a little bit of damage on impact. It's okay, it's just not crazy. And again, you want to level up this talent as much as you possibly can, because it's going to affect and scale up your attack bonus. So you guys can see right there, the attack bonus goes from 78 to 80%. So if you're not rocking if you haven't got lucky and with a legendary one-handed sword, then just level up the share of the talent and chip away at it like that, and you'll be able to get by that way. Great. Now, what about this ability? Should we level up this ability? Grin, this ability is why Bennett works so well. So this is just your normal E, but it is on a 3-second cooldown. This functionally allows you to produce a lot of energy for Bennett, because it comes back really fast as long as you're not using the charge attack. We'll get into the kind of like Bennett's other playstyle / weird minutia to everything. But for this build we're going with right now, which is just max support level Bennett, this is what you should kind of go for, I think, in my opinion. I'm open to being corrected, and there's 1,000 other builds there. I'm just going for a free-to-play's perspective, or for trying to help a free-to-play. If a person who just got Bennett and is like, oh, I need to have constellation to make him good. No, because if you build Bennett, you already have a fuck ton of healing. You're going to be able to get 2 ticks in your max health, and now you have the attack buff. And then you can just use the shield character to keep yourself safe in the meantime if you wanted to, but I digress. Regardless, why this intrinsically plays into its Bennett's ult is because it just produces a shit ton of energy, and it comes back really, really fast, and also it hits somewhat hard. This is where you can kind of make Bennett a DPS if you wanted to kind of scale things appropriately. But now, with that being said though, in order to get to Bennett's ult, you are going to need to use his E, so if you have extra points or you just want to round off a character, giving him better scaling here does not hurt at all. And yeah, hi ladies and gentlemen, me here in editing. One thing I forgot to actually go over, which is pretty important, is the artifact set bonus. Not just the artifacts, we'll get into exactly what mine look like, but one thing that we don't really cover is the fact that there are basically 3 or 2 sets that you can use with Bennett that are like the cream of the crop, high level kind of play, and that of course is the Maiden Beloved set, which basically gives Bennett a crazy amount of healing. And that's where I kind of feel like Bennett has incredible diminishing returns, because you guys are about to see with the healing that I have built for Bennett, we already do too much healing to where nothing can kill me even close. And yeah, that's again why I say that it doesn't matter about constellations, because you're going to be healing for so much anyway that you're barely ever going to not have the attack buff. And with the ticks that are going to be proccing that you guys are going to be seeing, that's more than enough consistency to constantly full health almost immediately when switching to that character. And then the other set that I think is the best set for Bennett, just because it kind of addresses the diminishing returns factor of Bennett when it comes to healing, and that is the Noblest Obliged set, which increases every person in your party's attack damage when you use an alt. And Bennett, in order to activate the mass attack scaling, you're going to need to basically use your ult, and that's going to set off even more damage for your entire party. And we're going to get into it, but the reason why that's so good is because Bennett can amplify all of your party's damage anyway, just because of your using their abilities in his ult. And if their ability lasts a long time and his ult goes away, their damage is still going to be scaled up until their, of course, attack animation for their E or ult ends. Anywho, just thought I'd mention that. Again, Noblest Obliged, pretty huge. By the way, the third one that's kind of like for the weird DPS version of Bennett is, of course, the fire equivalent artifact set that Hu Tao uses and Diluc uses. It's the fire artifact set. Crimson Witch of Flames is what it's called. And yeah, it basically just increases vaporize procs and stuff like that, which Bennett can kind of utilized, but again, you're going to have to probably dip into Elemental Mastery in order to make that really viable, and it just seems like it's probably not the best place to be, but we'll talk about DPS Bennett at the end. But anyways, thank you for your time, and me in the past, take it away. Let's run around the world space and fuck shit up with Bennett and talk more about how he basically functions going and fighting bosses and etc. But with Bennett being very much a support character, you do need a DPS character. Like again, he just makes your other characters do everything better, and that's why Bennett's fantastic. So if you have any character like Official, a Zhongli, a Venti, or whatever, any person that can produce damage outside for a long period of time, if that character is in Bennett's ult, all of them get that bonus attack bump, which affects all of their abilities and is a part of the algorithm of scaling damage within the game. So Bennett functionally gives everyone damage as long as you're able to get to his ult. And before we actually go run around and kill shit, let me show you guys my Bennett and how I've built him and how I think you should build him. At least when you're just starting out, you can aim for making him like this, but then also maybe a support. But I would advise just going full support, because when you start to do with damage level stuff, you start to kind of not be able to have as much energy recharge because you're trying to get crit rate and stuff like that. This is my Bennett. So first things first, his attack, his base attack, is not great. Okay, the weapon I have leveled up for him is okay. It's not great. Alright, I need to level up to level 90, and if I ever did get any 5-star weapon, I would immediately give it to Bennett, even if it was good for somebody else, just because Bennett can just amplify the other characters that I'm dealing with damage. I digress. Anyways, so yes, how you want to build Bennett, crit rate and crit damage mean relatively nothing to Bennett because he's not meant to be that DPS damage. He can be if you build him in this really unconventional kind of odd way, sure, but what Bennett requires is basically a shit ton of energy recharge. Give or take like 300%. Aim for 300. Most people go like 290, 280, 270, and you can get by with that very, very well actually. But also, Bennett's HP is insanely high for me. It is 21,000 HP, and I don't even have his ult fully leveled up, and I never have gotten close to dying. Again, your healing proc that happens every couple seconds when you're in Bennett's ult is basically healing me to full with one tick. And the funny thing is, it says it only heals you up to 70%, which is true, but if you happen to be at like 60% and you heal for such a high abundance, you'll just have 100% health. So yeah, if the proc itself is potent enough, it doesn't matter because it'll go beyond 70%, if that makes any sense. But then it will stop when you get up to 100 or 80 or whatever health, if that makes any sense. But anyways, one more thing I wanted to mention that's kind of crucial with how Bennett works. Not crucial, again, if you have C0 Bennett, he is still fantastic. Because if you just build Bennett fully, he has enough healing that you can get to 70% attack always. But maybe if you're in the Spiral Abyss and you're like wanting to queue up a Venti ult, you don't want to have to like sit in Bennett's ult for a while, not deal damage, and then when you finally get enough health, then you unleash. You just want to switch to Venti, unleash, and know that you're getting the attack buff. Which is why his first constellation is the most important. Fantastic Voyage, your ult attack is no longer tied to having to have the HP restriction. And also gain an additional 20% to Bennett's base attack. So now you're constantly healing and you're always having the attack buff, which makes Bennett fucking nutty. Also, the one thing that's so good about Bennett is that it's just you always have like invulnerability. It's kind of like the feeling of like Zhongli, except not having to wish for a 5-star. But also, you're amplifying damage, which I guess Zhongli now does, but he debuffs people. But Bennett, you can theoretically get more damage out of Bennett than you can Zhongli debuffing physical damage and elemental mastery. Although, why not have both? Again, that's what I'm running currently with my weird Razor builds. So yeah. Number 2, I think it's just nice, but it's not required. Some people say you need 2 constellations for Razor, for Bennett. When Bennett's HP falls below 70%, his energy regen is increased by 30. So, when you have no ult with Bennett, switch to him if you're in Spiral Abyss or whatnot and you're getting smashed. He's going to lower his health, and then any sort of particle that you generate is going to guarantee you get enough particles. But again, if you're building Bennett at the end tier, so if you're investing in him already, you're gonna be aiming for having a crazy amount of energy recharge. So also, what are Bennett's artifacts? Again, the main stats that you're going to be looking for Bennett is similar to Venti. Energy recharge, HP, HP. You can also go energy recharge, and HP if you plan on leveling up this talent a lot, because that will just make the small HP that you do have go even farther. But for me, I found myself being able, with my artifacts that I was getting, to basically be okay. And again, the one thing that Bennett can always use more of, especially if you're going HP, is to get in his substats a shit ton of energy recharge. So this one, I got kind of lucky with 10 energy recharge, not crazy, kind of, I think I got 1 bump into it, not great. But this one got 22, so it's a lot of energy recharge just coming from one of my pieces. That's not bad at all. And then I believe this one, this one had HP in it, so I had an energy recharge goblet or time watch, which had a shit ton of HP percent in that one, so they're kind of harmonizing with each other lovely, in a lovely way. Another 10,000 energy recharge, also HP, and also HP on this one, and energy recharge. And this one was just kind of insane. I just needed something to throw on him, so I threw this one on him. Regardless, yeah, so this is how my Bennett works, and you always basically have your ult, or you're 1 cycle away from his ult, or 3 seconds away from his ult after you quickly switch to him, use your E, hit an enemy, and then wait 3 seconds, hit it again, and then you have your ult, and you're your max health. And stuff like that. But Bennett is also part of the quick acting, switch to this character, switch to that character, give it a couple seconds, and then you can switch back and hit. So he's part of a cycling of ease kind of loadout. Again, man, I fucking hate the way Bennett looks though. I like his hairstyle and his design. He's scarred to shit. I think that's all fine. I like his personality of him being like, I am gonna be whatever, the guy, the dude. And one of these. Okay, so we have a good bit of energy, but if we hit one person, those 2 particles are gonna go a long way. And we can do this, and then make sure your Bennett collects the goddamn particles. And now, as long as we're in here, we're gonna be doing more damage. And also, since we casted Zhongli's pillar in here, unless I'm mistaken, it's going to gain the benefits of the attack buff, which, by the way, is what people call screenshotted or snapshotted. So because Bennett ult, by the way, we have Bennett's ult and we just used it and we didn't hit anything besides the follow-up ult. So we're gonna do this, and that's usually the formula that you can use with Bennett. And again, we don't have our ult right now, but if I were to switch to Bennett, we're close. In fact, we have our ult again. And our Bennett's ult also, almost you can back-to-back it, because it's only 2 seconds of downtime. Before you can use it again. But yeah, I've never had, this is just me coming from me, I've never had such a good healer. Because Bennett is you're just fully topped off all the time, and you feel and also Bennett, my god, my Bennett has 33k health. Jesus. So most people are 100% surviving when Bennett's in your party, and also you're getting a ton of attack speed buff, and also it's just, you always have that ult, that huge radius that amplifies damage. Again, another person that works amazingly with Venti combination is, with Bennett is Venti, because Venti basically does a ton of slashes. In fact, if we wanted to just do that, we could. All right, so the only thing we're getting from this, we're not going to get character attack buff, because that might, although I don't think it will, because it's base attack. It can't just say attack, because Bennett's not going to benefit from attack, which is also, by the way, why I should have mentioned you're not going to go for attack percentage, because it's not buffing Bennett's base attack. The only thing that base attack is functionally affected by is your level and your weapon, and that first constellation that just buffed the attack gain by that. Anyways, we're gonna go with okay, that's kind of weird too. I guess we'll just do, when we defeat an enemy, we restore some health. Hopefully, well, let's just do this. Because we have Bennett's ult, I'm going to show you guys the level of healing that Bennett has. Okay? Just so that you guys know the healing is not the problem. Okay? Let's go over here. Come on and hit me. I'm going to do this. I probably should let myself get hit a little more. Hit me. Well, none of these enemies are doing any damage to begin with, so a little rough. This is one of those moments where you're like, oh, Genshin's not hard, yeah. Okay, well, none of these enemies can pack enough of a punch, so we're just gonna do this instead. So some of those enemies are on fire, so then we're gonna use Venti, which we're gonna showcase later down the line, but is just gonna eviscerate all of them. You could use Sucrose, you could use anybody who basically constantly delivers or outputs damage, and they're just gonna be doing a whole lot. Perfect, these guys can actually pack quite a punch. All right, so we're gonna let Bennett get basically wrecked. They also have like this huge kind of attack, so I can't wait. Okay, perfect. So now we're getting a little bent, although we do have a lot of HP. Now we're gonna use this. We're also going to hit them once because we're not going to be able to we want to keep basically back-to-backing our ult, and we have enough to cast our ult again right here. Oh, also, by the way, I didn't mention that. Whilst you're in, I forgot that's how that works. Sorry, not a great guide. But when you're in his ult, your E comes back even faster. So yeah, fuck me up, hit me. Perfect. I know it. Let me get in the line of fire. So we're getting hit, right? We're just getting smashed by that ice barrage, and we're still fine. They can't kill us in this thing. Also, again, our E is coming back instantly whilst we're in our ult, so we can basically make sure that we're fully charged and going to be able to cast our ult in a second as well. So again, we're just getting smashed. Hit. It's not able to do not nearly enough damage to kill me, or kill anybody else who's in my area of influence. So again, if Razor was low health, we would be able to profit and be 100% okay as well. So again, we could switch to other characters like a Venti if we wanted, and again, if we were able to use Venti's ult in this instance, Venti would just profit immensely because basically cast his ult or his damage inside of Bennett's ult, which will permanently buff up his damage because he casted it within Bennett's ult. So again, this is why most of the times you see people enter in with Bennett and then just do everything else, which most characters can do. There are a couple of characters that have to like move in order to deal damage. Eula, like if an enemy's far away, she has to melee attack them to build up stacks, and if an enemy like a hilly turtle rushes you and drags the enemy away, the simplest, best way, in my opinion, for Bennett is just to focus on energy recharge, honestly, because like right there we have too much healing. Like there's no such thing really, but there is when you could be putting that into other stuff. So for instance, if I could tweak anything about my build, I would probably lower the amount of HP that I have and increase the amount of energy recharge, because the healing that I'm attaining is far too much. It's like we have 33k health, and there's like, we never even got close to 30% health. We were always like 50 to 60 or 50 to 70, just because of the tick that we have happen. Our E comes back so quickly. And again, one of the things I didn't actually know about, because I don't play Bennett that much, is because I've been playing with other characters, and I've always had Zhongli, which makes me functionally unkillable anyway. But again, Bennett is not just a support healer; he's an attack buff in characters. So if you happen to have characters that can be affected by that, like a Venti, and maybe like a Yomi, and maybe like an Ayaka, and maybe like certain characters with a giant, that they basically set off a long functioning ult, like a Ganyu is also a great example. Any person that can cast a long duration of damage ult in Bennett's thing, well, that ult will be better because it's taking the damage buff amplification. But yes, whilst you are in the area of Bennett's ult, your E cooldown is reduced by 50%. So it's on 3-second cooldown, it's on like 1.5, if that. 1.8 maybe, but anyways, regardless, you're able to just quickly generate your E really quick if you're really trying to be careful, because maybe you don't have enough HP. Healing, maybe you need to make sure the ult constantly going and you're just running around the ult dodging. If you don't have enough HP because you're just starting out in the game, just make sure to use, whenever you're in his ult, use Bennett's E to last whatever kind of storm is happening, whether that's a automaton spinning and wrecking you because it does so much burst damage, or whatever. Now, Grin, what is the other ways you can build our adventure boy? Well, you can go with this kind of a DPS Bennett, which usually works as, it's still energy recharge here, but it's pyro damage, and you want to either get crit rate or crit damage. It's usually crit rate, and you want to get as much crit rate and crit damage in your substats, and you want to level up this ability because you're going to want this ability to hit quite hard. Now, if you are going to do this, I don't know what the exact numbers are, just because it's kind of a niche build that seems to be relatively odd. But anyways, I still think it's more valuable to just use his E. But with that being said, though, the reason why like burst DPS Bennett is a thing is because when you are in his ult, your E cooldown is like heavily reduced, so you can just hit 1, 2, hit 1, 2, and even though it's only scaling a little bit, it's still scaling enough to be pretty hefty. And also, your other characters can still benefit from this kind of strong secondary DPS. And again, because in your ult you can hit your E more, you're generating particles so that you can basically back-to-back Bennett's ult, and you only really need to survive for 2 seconds. And if you have any other character that can like do any damage or any crowd control or any sort of whatever, any sort of shield creation to give him some like survivability, even though I don't even think you need that. Yeah, that is how burst DPS Bennett can be a thing, is because in our alt, we basically can infinitely spam this. We're basically constantly able to output that like burst of damage, so that's why people build pyro damage amplification on your cup, and then try to get as much crit rate and crit damage, so when this does hit, it hits really, really fucking hard. Now, because Bennett's, a living nightmare as a human being, and just kind of, is just cursed for no reason. He's a very upbeat, kind person, but people still wreck him. The way he fights is clunky, which is why his E actually has 3 charges, which is interesting. So you basically hold down his E, and then as soon as you see that flash, he gets this ultra thing, this ultra attack, which is what people can also use as a DPS factor. As long as you're in the alt, your cooldown is functionally halved, so you can use the charge ability without there being much negative. And again, I think if you have 2 electro characters, that just gives your E back even quicker, so you could even mess with that. Anyways, but then Bennett also has another ability, which is this. If you fully charge it, he kills himself, basically. He Viking Funeral, bop, hits the ground and sends himself flying back. And yeah, this one is on a pretty hefty cooldown, but yeah, that's 7 seconds, 8 seconds, something like that. Not bad, but not great. But in your alt, it's not that bad, but it's the charging that does make it. So it's not just on a 7-second cooldown. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 11-second cooldown, which again, it's still not the worst. So again, this is why DPS Bennett is a thing and can work. The other thing that you can do, if you have any sort of shielding character like Diona or whatever, you can actually do this charge attack, and you will not get sent flying back, because you have a shield, so the little explosion damage will not actually send Bennett flying back, so that you can just keep dealing damage. Although again, Bennett's not going to get a lot of DPS from his melee attacking, at least I don't think so. I have not seen any videos of that, or have seen any gameplay of that. Again, his DPS comes from the fact that when you're in his ult, you can just start laying out these, just start swinging that fire sword around, and can wreck in that regard. Again, in order to build him in this way, you are going to have to take sacrifices away from energy recharge and your healing. Now, again, I think your HP you can have relatively low HP as long as you're investing in this talent. You're fine. But again, the energy recharge, the fact that when you switch over to him, you're not able to get your E confidently. You're not able to be like, boom, hit your E once and know you definitely have your ult. That's a little shitty, I think. A little not so great to like go into combat knowing that you don't get that. I'm not a fan of that. But yeah, again, Bennett is a character that I don't think is going to age out of the game unless they make it so that his ult doesn't stack on top of maybe other like damage circles that they could add in the future. But the reason why I've built him functionally, just for anyone who's curious, is because of a team I think is going to be pretty fun, which is an upcoming character, and Venti, and just every character that can basically deal damage with from basically staying in the same zone. So if you have a range character as a main DPS, like a Ganyu, or ideally like a Yenfi, is what I would also consider, you could use Bennett, put down a damage zone. Yenfi, the caster, can just cast in Bennett's damage ult, but also you could switch to Venti, put out his swirl, and now Yomi's doing charge attacks while everyone's clumped in a tight area. And you can also use someone like Shincho, who is just throwing a bunch of water blades at Venti's swirl, all dealing just a huge damage soup that Bennett is facilitating and helping with. And this can go with just about any range DPS. Nin Wong could also work. Just you want a character that can basically hit from afar and stay in Bennett's AoE with incredible ease. And if you have a character like Venti or Sucrose that can basically CC or pull people in, that make it so that Bennett doesn't get like pushed away from his circle somehow, some way, get frozen, put in a bubble, goes away, you can't cast it again, you die. Not good. So yeah, having any character like that, again, the aforementioned Wind Boy who just came out, who's fantastic and everyone's very, very excited and happy about. But ladies and gentlemen, that has been Bennett. I'll be honest, I was quite tired today, and I decided to make this video. I could have probably done a little bit of a better job, forgive me if it came a little scuffed. Because yes, also, let Bennett, better smile for the people. You little fucking weird kid. Anyway, again, The biggest takeaway from this whole video is, please, MiHoYo, give this guy a free skin. Please make it free. Don't make me pay fucking $20 for a skin, my guy. I maybe like 5 stars, but can't do it to a 4-star, my dude. Anyways, Bennett's amazing. I finally built him because, again, there was an instance where I was like, okay, now an upcoming team, an upcoming, like, DPS that I want to get would massively, I think, benefit from Bennett being Bennett. Again, being able to output a crazy amount of damage if you're able to stay within an area, which sometimes you're not, i.e. a Diluc can kind of suffer. But with that being said, though, you gotta understand Bennett's wonderfulness from every kind of angle, such as the fact that he is basically a battery, especially if he is in his ult. His ult, he can constantly E and produce a ton of energy for your fire-like characters. So that's Hu Tao, that's Diluc, that's anyone else, Yenfi, anyone who you need to juice up. Bennett can be that kind of weird battery, on top of being an amplification of your damage, and on top of making you functionally immortal while being in his ult, and his ult having a relatively no cooldown, or like downtime. Bennett's a little nutty, and I hope more 4-stars kind of become that way, at least 4-star supports, because some of the 4-star supports, like Rosaria, have been really, really cool when it comes to like crit rates, but I don't know what like, in comparison to Xingqiu and Bennett, it's just kind of like, oh, what? I mean, I'm happy these are 4-stars, but like Rosaria and like Rocker Girl, the last like couple characters that they released and whatnot. Well, Rocker Girl was a bit away, but yeah, they're like, okay, it decreases physical resistance. All right, like, and also Bennett can be a functional DPS just because of how his ult has so many like side buffs, like reducing cooldowns. I'm sorry it took such a long time to do Bennett. It's just that I ended up being the characters that I wished for were like Zhongli, where I just built up his shield, so I never really cared if I got hit, and I was dealing enough damage to be happy. And Bennett kind of was an option, which I know for a lot of people, Bennett is the only option because of just how good he is. But yeah, also, again, as much as you want to be powerful, you also want to enjoy the look of your character, and again, I keep mentioning it, but I genuinely, I love Bennett's, like, design, but not his clothes. I think his clothes make him awful looking. I think his, like, scarred arm and shit, and his, like, fucking giant goggles, love it. Love it. Is that his personality? He talks a lot, but it's fine. But as of his, like, stupid, weird, fucking... yeah, I'm not a fan. Anyways, maybe some of you guys love his design, which is great. More power to you. But not my cup of tea. Anyways, happy I built him. I would highly advise everyone build him because Bennett can kind of slot in anywhere. And again, key points that are important for Bennett that I should have probably kept hammering home. Your ult's attack buff scales off of Bennett's level and Bennett's weapon, okay? So those are the things that you need if you want to make that better, as well as just leveling up the talent itself. Those are 3 things that can make Bennett amazing. So if you haven't done either of those things, maybe that's why Bennett's not healing you for that much, maybe that's why Bennett's not, his attack buff isn't that incredible, and maybe that's why it's hard to build his ult. Because you don't have the right things in alignment. But when you get this boy made, he is going to deliver back onto you immortality, essentially, which is great. Anywho, ladies and gentlemen, thank you kindly for your time. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day, and goodbye.